All right, welcome to the Somewhat Creative Show, the podcast where we explore the ideas, tools, and people shaping the creative world.
I'm Clark Miller, here with my perpetually optimistic co-host, Rocky Tilney.
Well, I don't know about optimistic, Clark. I mean, I was just reading that entry-level jobs, design jobs, dropped 33% in 1 year.
Well, you're still optimistic if you think we'd ever survive starting over in this market.
That's a good point.
So that's what today's episode is about. No guest, no distractions, just the two of us talking about a terrifying question. If we had to start our design careers today in 2025, with everything we know and everything that's going on, what the hell would we do?
I'm not sure I have the answer to that, and I honestly would worry if we'd actually make it.
Well, I think we'd make it. I think the path would look completely different. 20 years ago, we had internships and portfolios and janky websites, and you learned by doing production work, cropping photos, building templates, the boring stuff that builds that muscle.
Right. And, today you don't have to do any of that shit. AI does it all for you in a few seconds. So where does that leave the new designers, 22-year-olds, when I started, actually maybe more like 19?
Yeah, right.
How do you break in when you don't have to learn those skills?
We've got data, real data, about what's happening in the creative job market. Spoiler alert, it's brutal out there. But we're also going to talk about the opportunities that didn't exist when we started.
Yeah, and here's the thing. In some ways, it's going to be harder, but also you have access to tools now, education, you have video resources that we couldn't even imagine having back then. I was reading books at Barnes & Noble on graphic design.
Right? So we're not here to sugarcoat it or panic, honestly. We're going to just tell it to you straight, what's working, what's not. And if we had to restart from zero today, no network, no reputation, no safety net, what would we do?
So we're calling this episode, If We Had to Start Over Today, Building a Creative Career in 2026.
And like I said, we're anchoring this in some actual statistics, some job market trends, AI adoption rates, skill gaps, salary data, all the stuff we wish someone had shown us when we were starting out.
Plus, we're going to do something kind of fun today. I'm excited about this part. We're going to send texts to our younger selves. So what we want to do is give 3 pieces of advice each. Things we wish we would have known or wish we had someone mentor and tell us to do.
Yeah, mine's going to be rough too. Like, dear 23-year-old Clark, stop spending so much time perfecting your Dreamweaver skills. No one's going to give a shit about that.
I definitely have some of those moments as well.
So whether you're a student wondering if you've picked the wrong major, a mid-career designer feeling the walls closing in, or just someone curious about where this industry is headed,
this episode's for you. I think a good place to start, Clark, is let's look at the brutal truth. Let's look at the actual statistics today and what we're seeing.
Do we have to?
We have to do this because we have to get through the bad stuff first. We have to look at entry-level jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Entry-level jobs are really like a key indicator on where a specific career path or a specific industry is going. So here are some of the things we've pulled that kind of demonstrate and show that. And this isn't really designed to scare people that are trying to get into the industry. This is really just to kind of paint a picture of where we are today. So computer graphic artist positions have declined 33%. So we kind of previewed that in our intro in 2025. And that's following an already 12% drop in 2024. So it's a compounding issue now. Photographers down 28%, writers down 28% year over year. World Economic Forum's 2025 report identified graphic design as the 11th fastest declining job category over the next 5 years.
Ouch.
That's kind of scary, right?
It's freaking me out.
Anthropic's CEO, Anthropic's one of the major AI tools out there today, predicts AI could eliminate half of all entry-level white-collar jobs within 5 years. Oof. That's scary too. So workers age 18 to 24 are 129% more likely than those over 65 to worry AI will make their job obsolete. So this isn't our parents' job market anymore,
No,
right? Uh, and
those are
so
scary numbers.
those are scary numbers. But one of the things that I think we need to talk about, and kind of this is like the discussion point of all this data, is the work that we used to do that was kind of our training groundwork, like you mentioned
Yeah,
in the intro, the cropping, the editing photos, the things like that. That those tasks are being replaced with AI to do them
yeah,
quickly. And I know this because I use those tools today to save me time
absolutely. Nano
in my
banana, baby.
workflow. So if they don't have to do that, what does a young graphic artist or someone in the creative field, what do they do to get their first break? What are some of the tasks that they would be working on?
Yeah, I mean, my advice, and this is something you and I have talked about extensively to people that are getting started in this career, is like, if there's no job there, you got to just start
Mhm.
doing. You got to build your own job, like build your own fictitious company and have them hire you and start doing everything you would be doing.
Mhm.
That, is a difficult proposition in some ways because you don't know what they would necessarily have you do, and you don't know
Right.
what's going to be valuable, right? But I think that's the only way to get those skills, is to like challenge yourself and honestly use AI. Like, go ask ChatGPT to make up a fictitious company and have them assign you some projects. And I think that's like the only way you're
Hmm.
going to develop as a designer early on, without those entry level jobs, without those kind of, if you're starting out in, like I did when I was young and getting into photography, it's like, it definitely, I honed my skills in photography without necessarily having a lot of work coming in. So I think you could
Right.
still do that. That's kind of the beauty of the
Right.
the industry, is like you can still kind of figure it out yourself. So I think that's step one.
So that's interesting. So what you're saying is almost giving yourself using AI to challenge yourself in
Hmm.
these design tasks that you're not getting. No one's hiring you for this. You're not getting an entry level job to perform these tasks anymore,
Yeah.
right? So you have to still go through that training process, but with not an official role, right?
Yeah.
So you may be using AI, and I think this is what you're saying is use AI as either a fictitious company that you work for and have it give you these design tasks
Or
and challenge
client,
you
or
to do that.
yeah, anything.
What would you say about people jumping into more of the gig economy in terms of creative then? So, people could jump into WeWork or any of Fiverr or any of those platforms and start working on projects that
Does
are
WeWork
maybe
have a like
or
platform
Upwork, my
now
bad.
for Upwork? Got
Upwork.
it. Yeah. I was going to say
They all
WeWork should
sound
get
the
into that.
same these
You
days. All
could
the
go to the
brands are
WeWork
kind of
office. I think you should. I
blending
think you should pitch
together.
that to WeWork. Like, they should have their
Yeah,
own like little freelancing gig economy.
they probably could. So anyway, that's another way that new creatives could kind of start building a portfolio too, is doing
Yeah,
smaller task-based
sure.
projects like that.
I think those are great. I from my experience with those, the hardest part is like you're still trying to break into an established environment in those.
Mhm.
From what I've seen, and I've only dabbled slightly in some of those kind of Fivers and work kind of tools.
Right.
They never, I never, when I used them to find people to do work, it was okay. You could find decent people.
Mhm.
And when I tried to use them to deliver me work, it was tough because I feel like you're always beaten out by somebody that's been on there for 5 years and has like
Right.
a bunch of ratings and reviews, and they can get
Yeah.
their prices lower than everybody else because they've been doing it for a while and they have enough people all
Mm.
giving them works. Like, when you're starting out, you kind of need those jobs to pay you a little more. So
Right.
I don't know. I think those are a challenge in my mind, and it's a pathway I think people should try it and see if it works for them. But I don't know. It's that's a tough route to go down. I tried to do like stock photography early on in my career. Like, I thought, well, this will be a good way to make a few bucks on, without really having somebody to pay me to do certain things. It's like I can just do it and then put it on Shutterstock, and when people download it, I'll make a few bucks.
Right.
I see that as like the same sort of thing as some of those. It's more work than you think it's going to be for a lot less money than you think it's going to be, right?
Mhm.
That's the, I think, the challenge with a lot of those.
What about this whole notion too of building in public?
Mm.
and creating in public. We've
Yeah.
seen
Yeah.
platforms, YouTube, obviously, there's designers that are showing every process that, at the start to finish. And when we were starting out, it was sort of taboo to show, have a peek behind the curtain to see how we work, how we
Hmm.
operate. And there was this sort of mystique or about how creatives work. Like we get our brief and we go back and we come back with some amazing stuff to look at. We
Yeah.
didn't let people in, right? And now
Yeah. You
that's
didn't show the
flipped,
failures, and yeah,
right?
you wanted everything on your site to be like the most polished, like finished product. There was a lot of that.
Exactly,
That was the advice at the
exactly.
time, I feel like.
And I think now it's like you can show the thinking. It's okay. We have approval now to show our thinking as we go through a process that
Yeah.
this isn't final work. This is what we're working on to get to the final work. It's part of the process. So we protected our work back in the day, and now I think if you're a young designer and creative, and you want to show your process, that you can. And I've seen many of successful cases of this on YouTube, where they have hundreds of thousands of followers watching
Hmm.
them create artwork, sketches, process videos, experiments, and they're consistent with it. They're
Yeah.
posting new content weekly. So that's a great way, I think, also to get feedback, but at the same time, you're building awareness and you're building a brand for yourself. So it's that whole personal
Yeah.
branding, but also
I think
being, open.
100%. I think like that would be the route that I would take if I was starting out today,
Hmm.
is like, and you don't have to just do that. I like, you could even put like a link to your Upwork page or something, and have people hire, if people want to hire you, go to this page or something. There's ways to kind of, I think, align the two things if you do want to do that. But I think that is great advice for anybody starting out, is to be open, share your work, show your work, show the process, ask for advice
Hmm.
from the community, build a community. And then even if you have a small area, and I think we'll get into this, like if you find that niche, even if you don't have a million followers, like you can
Right.
really get your work out there, and you can make those networking connections that are, I think, crucial to anybody that's building a career now.
And I think this transcends, goes way beyond just graphic design and art. It's
Yeah.
illustration, it's woodworking, it's photography, it's videography. I love the
Hmm.
videography reels that I come across on social where they're showing how they're doing this really cool shot, right, with their
Yeah.
phone. And then they show them doing the shot, and then they show the actual reveal of what that shot, how it turned out. And I think
Hmm.
those are always very interesting. So I think there are, you don't have to have all the answers, but you have to show creativity.
No, and I think one of the beauties of that route as a starting point is that you'll quickly learn not just the nuts and bolts of whatever craft you're trying to perfect.
Hmm.
It gives you an opportunity to put that energy somewhere, and to show things that you're working on, and to continue to like come up with stuff to do. I think it also develops that storytelling muscle, and
Hmm.
that is, from all accounts, and we can kind of, I think we should get back into some of these data points, but I think that is where the true path in today's environment leads, is like developing your high level thinking and your creativity and your storytelling. And I think when you bring that to your own personal brand, and you are building in public, and I feel like this is something you and I don't do enough of. And I think
Hmm.
partially that's because of the route that we took. It wasn't that necessary.
Right.
There weren't as many people looking, other than your portfolio. It's like there just wasn't that audience, but now there
Hmm.
is. And I
Right.
would definitely dive more into it. And like I said, I think it's because you can show that you have that creativity and that like storytelling prowess through that
Hmm.
experience, like through your YouTube or through your Instagram or whatever it is. It's like, use
Right.
that as your portfolio in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're, started talking about statistics too. And we're seeing that with just kind of the skills gap, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get into that. So the paradox there is that there's high demand, honestly, but the like you said, the skills gap, there are fewer jobs. So 56% of creative and marketing leaders say their teams have skill gaps.
Mm.
59% said the impact of those gaps has increased in the past year. Marketing specialists have 2.4% unemployment marketing managers 3.1%, and web and UX designers 3.8%, all above the national rate of 4.2, or below rather
Yeah.
than the
Yeah.
national rate of 4.2. However, roles involving creative direction and strategy are more resistant to AI than those execution roles. So I think that's
Mm,
like what I'm saying
yeah.
too, is like, those higher level thinking jobs are going to be more resistant to
Yeah.
being taken by AI.
So we know skills are important, obviously, but I feel like you have to couple those skills with softer skills like strategy and
Mm-hmm.
creative thinking as well. So you can't just be to have the hard skills and expect to be successful in this
Yeah.
career, that you're going to need to be a strategic and creative thinker and a great communicator, which doesn't come up
Mm-hmm.
in these statistics, but I think communication is probably one of the more important attributes that a creative could have.
Yeah. And I think that's again where that kind of putting yourself out there and telling your own story can really help you develop that talent and that skill. you
Yeah.
know we're talking about
Mm,
like how these companies are really desperate for the talent, but they're not hiring younger designers. They're not hiring juniors. They all want senior designers in these roles that can really think strategically and are kind of, I think a lot of them are whittling down these teams too, and
yeah.
they want you to use AI tools to make a team of one feel like 10 years ago would have taken five people. So, when no one will give you that entry level experience, I think you have to do it for yourself. You have to become your own brand, and you have to,
Right.
like we
Right.
said, build your own fictitious company, and or create your own personal brand, and have that be where you start out and develop those skills.
Well, in previous episodes, we've talked a lot about how the forecast for independent contractors is going to be, in the 70s or 70% or more of rather than new hires. So these
Hmm.
are definitely, kind of goes into what you're just saying about you have to kind of blaze your own trail and be your own boss in a way. And, you know, I think that's going to really what drive the creative industry going forward. It's not that you're going to be working for a large agency, most likely,
Yeah.
because the large agencies are also scaling down. But the skills gap with the talent though is interesting. So we have, you know, you have these entry level positions that have requirements of 5 years experience,
Yeah.
and those don't match up, right? You
No.
can't have an entry level position with 5 years experience or 3 years experience. Like these should be entry level, like
Yeah.
traditional entry level positions, and they're just not. And so I don't know why those positions are being posted.
Uh,
My daughter's been looking at those jobs too, and not just in creative but marketing, entry
hmm
level 5 years experience. Sorry,
hmm
that doesn't exist.
Well, I think what's happening is there are people that are more experienced than that entry level position that are taking those entry level jobs. I think
Yeah,
there's enough of a you know layoffs and whittling down of this
right.
creative workforce where there are people that have those 5 years, 10 years of experience that are like just desperate enough to take an entry level job,
Hmm.
which is a sad realization that you're now competing for these entry level jobs. If you're starting out and have no experience, you're competing now with people that have 5 years of experience.
Right.
I think it's similar probably to the recession, the 2008 2009 recession, in terms of the job market and what you're up against. Like I remember applying for jobs, and just every I feel like I probably went on 3 job interviews during that time and got to like the last round, top 2, 3, 4
Hmm.
prospects, and got turned down because there was somebody that had 10 years of experience over me, and they were just like, we got to take the person that's more experienced. It's just a more surefire
Right.
bet. So I think
So
that's the only way to do it now, is
yeah.
to make your own experience.
So advice going forward to new creatives in the field would be not just learning the hard skills, I think, but also really understanding overall creative direction and strategy. I think those are
Mm,
really, really important skills. And I think that will bridge the gap with those execution roles that are sort of disappearing. Those low
yeah.
level, entry level, task based roles where you're just doing some,
Hmm.
not even creative, you're doing technical
Yeah.
manipulation,
Yeah.
essentially,
You're doing the busy
of
work.
things.
But
Right,
you're learning. You're doing the busy work, but you were
right.
definitely learning from the people above you. So let me ask you this, Rocky. How do I don't know exactly where you learn those skills. How do you
Mm.
learn creative direction and strategy?
That's
Is it in
that's
a
really a
book?
great question. Well, I don't know. There are books for
Yeah.
sure. I read a lot of books on advertising and, creativity generally,
Hmm.
philosophy type books, stuff like that. That's, I think, where
Psychology.
I got a lot of my creative thinking from. It wasn't necessarily in the field. And a lot of it too was
Yeah.
just working with clients and trying to add value. The
Mm.
clients knew their business, they knew their craft, but they didn't know how to translate that into marketing messaging, into websites, into brand identity,
Yeah.
copywriting. So you have to. It's a translation that happens. Creatives are translators. They take complex ideas and they simplify them so that they could be, you know, brought into the world in a more simple form that more people can understand. But it's it's one thing to say I need to learn Photoshop, and you go on YouTube and you learn
Hmm.
Photoshop and you
Hmm.
practice with Photoshop. It's much harder to say I'm going to go on YouTube and learn brand strategy.
Yeah.
Now you
I
could
would
do
say
that. You
so.
could go to take
That's
courses. You could
There,
take
sure.
courses
I'm sure there
online and do
is.
that.
It's out
Yeah.
there. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
Udemy.
I remember reading, back in our time coming up, there wasn't as much of the YouTubes and the
Mhm.
everything else online yet. So I do remember reading a lot of books that were about strategy and design thinking. And one that really sticks out to me is Martin Lindstrom, Why We Buy.
Mhm.
Was a great
Mhm.
read back in the day, and
Yeah.
it was the psychology, and it had great case studies of like how certain companies like Jif marketed themselves as, choosy moms choose Jif in the 50s and
Mhm.
60s and
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and why that worked so well. Like, you're almost insulting people, like you're kind of saying like, what peanut butter are you using? Oh, you're not a choosy mom. They took that knowledge and that his experience in psychology and like applied it to advertising. And I think that was the first time that I realized that like a lot of this industry is so much more than just making something look pretty. Like there's so
Yeah.
much more that goes on behind the scenes, and the thinking behind things is 80-90% of it. Like the finished product and the brand or the website or whatever, it's like
Mhm.
those can look really good but not serve the ultimate purpose for the company or for the consumer to recognize
Right.
something that is going to propel that company forward, that's going to be valuable in the long run. So I definitely think, yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. I think developing those muscles and like learning strategic thinking, going on YouTube and just searching that creative strategy and brand strategy, and just learning as much as that as you can on your own before going into those interviews or going to those client meetings and
Right.
trying to get that job, so that you can speak really intelligently and already have like somewhat of a plan, or like again, our advice, like to develop that fake company, that fictitious company, and have them hire you and to do that work. Like, it doesn't stop at like just come up with a fake name so you can make a logo. I would say, develop a creative brief for the entire marketing strategy. And if you
Right.
don't know how to
Right.
do that, just try it. Like, just ask ChatGPT, how do I build a creative brief or whatever? It's like, I think there's
It's
ways
the
now,
systems. Yeah.
especially, that you can really develop those skills without anybody telling you and asking you to do it, and not having to learn from someone. Because that's what we're talking about, is like we learned that from maybe being a lower rung designer and like watching our senior level designers, our creative directors, our art directors,
Mhm.
go through these meetings. You would sit in on a meeting and you would watch them go like, okay, but that doesn't align with your goals of blah blah blah. And like we'd go, oh, okay, that's how you do that.
Right.
That's how you kind of
Right.
turn people to your thinking and everything. And now it's like, without those entry level jobs, you don't get that experience. You don't get to, follow the leader. So I think you have to come up with your own leader, right?
I do think creatives generally though, and when I say creative, I am using it broadly. I'm not saying that you're a designer or graphic artist or
Hmm.
you could be anybody in a creative field that's film, a writer, a producer, whatever, right? I think the secret power that creatives have generally is that they have this curiosity about how the world works. And I
Hmm.
think curiosity is always going to be a critical skill. I say skill loosely, but it's an attribute really.
Yeah.
When I
Until it
was
kills your
starting out
cat.
in design, I was reading almost everything about creativity. I remember one of the books I read, and I wasn't even planning on going into advertising
Hmm.
generally. But I remember reading How to Succeed in Advertising When All You Have Is Talent. That was the book. I don't even remember the author, but I do remember the title because I remember feeling like I was raw as a creative. Like I know I could be creative. But
Yeah.
with advertising, advertising doesn't work unless you understand the psychology of buyer behavior and of how people
Yeah.
operate. And so that curiosity is what led me to that. And I think if you are a young creative, I would pick up many books on, like I said, psychology, different adjacent fields like advertising, film production. Those ones are always fascinating because everything's so process oriented in film
Hmm.
production. And I think that those skills would lend themselves well to creative because I think, and you've alluded to this too, with the strategic brief and things like that. Process is what gives you that confidence to move forward with
Yep.
ideas and present those ideas to a client because you followed a creative process to do so.
Absolutely. And let's talk about, that creative thinking. Back into some of the data,
Hmm.
employers rated AI's ability to replicate that creative thinking as very low or extremely low.
Hmm.
Um, with creative thinking ranking fourth among skills expected to grow by 2030.
Mm.
Mentions of AI in job listings surged 56% in 2025, following the explosive growth of 114.8% in 2023,
Wow.
120.6% in 2024. The ability to interact with AI, I think, is what this is kind of showing us.
Right.
Um, Design skills have overtaken technical expertise as the most in demand skill in AI job related postings. To break that down for me, Rocky, because this is a lot of these, and I'll be honest, Rocky did all the data collection on this. He's the one digging through all the reports and
And we'll
adding a lot
share
of this.
the sources as well for these
Yeah,
numbers in our show notes so that you guys know we're not
he
just
made most
making
of
these
them
up.
up. Let's be honest. Yeah. But break this technical expertise versus design skills. Like, is it what's the design skill versus the technical skill, I
Yeah,
guess?
that's a tough one to kind of parse. I'm not sure
Mhm.
I understand that particular statistic, to be honest. I'm wondering though if it's really about efficiency,
Mhm.
and getting more creative done in a shorter amount of time. I don't know how you align design and AI as a skill. Maybe using AI tools? Like,
Yeah,
what's the
well,
value that comes out of that?
yeah, I
Faster
think
creative?
there's definitely faster. There's definitely I think with AI, with all the tools we have access to now, my skills in Photoshop have mattered less and less every year since
Mhm.
this stuff kind of came aboard. So, I think the technical skills of like knowing how to take something out in Photoshop or fix something in Photoshop, those are the technical skills that are disappearing, right?
Right.
Even even coding skills, even like, you know, front end designers type skills are
Yeah.
slowly fading away, like because you can just ask AI to kind of do the things. But I think that the design skill, the skill that matters when you're working with AI, is that ability to communicate like see it in your mind and communicate it and tell it how to get there, because it often will just, if you just say I want a great looking website or something, it'll build you something that like is decent or whatever, but it's going to look like everything else. If
Right.
you want to get something original and like that has your own unique point of view, and that's something we're going to touch on too, is developing your own kind of your own sense of style and your own you know creative language, let's say. But
Mhm.
I think that is the skill that you need to have now in order to get AI to like produce the work you want it to produce and not just like average out everything else and bring you the same thing it's going to bring everybody else.
Yeah. And I do think that it's interesting. I think the way you and I use AI in our creative work today
Hmm.
is going to be different than a new designer or creative using AI. Think I
Okay.
think for them it might be more of a crutch or more of a helper to do things that they maybe don't know how to create.
Yeah.
I think
But
for older designers, I'm sorry, go ahead if you're going to
no, I was
interject.
going to say, is that I mean, in some ways, and this is one thing I wanted to touch on that I feel like is the optimistic side of AI,
Mhm.
is that, you and I had in our careers before AI had to develop a lot of technical skills in order to
Mhm.
like execute a vision. I remember being so obsessed with creating 3D things. Like I tried to
Yeah.
learn Blender. It was always like
Yeah.
a little bit beyond my technical skills, and I would get in
Yeah.
trouble and try and do things that I
Right.
really couldn't do.
Same.
And often my
Yeah.
computer would like burn out because it was like trying to render out like you know, some
Mhm.
big I remember building this like gumball machine thing, and
Mhm.
I made the word gumball have gumballs that came out of it in After Effects,
Mhm.
and using like, what is it? Now I can't remember the name of these programs because I just don't
Cinema
use them anymore.
3D?
Yeah, Cinema 3D, and like getting it
Yeah.
to spit out all this stuff and then sitting there waiting for hours for it to render so it would be high res and stuff. And it's like we had to really learn a lot of technical expertise in order to like execute our kind of creative thinking. And
Yeah.
now that's really been flipped on its head, right? You need the creative thinking, the technical expertise. You can do that easily. Like if I wanted to
Yeah.
rebuild that gumball thing and like have gumballs coming out of whatever, it's like I just need to have that creative vision and know what I want it to look like. I think again, the language of the thing that we've developed is the ability to communicate to the AI stuff, the tools that we're using now, in a way that like we can tell it lighting, we can tell it like we want it to be a CGI rendered, with plastic shading versus
Mhm.
metallic shading. Like there's certain
Right.
things that we already see it in our mind and can describe it because we've had to learn a lot of those tools, right? And so
Yeah,
I
for
don't know, I
sure.
think
We've talked about this before. Yeah, the
that's the
experience
difference now.
of working, yeah, the experience of working in a field, where you have to understand lighting and texture and
Hmm.
materials, uh, and reflection and things like that. That comes from the technical skill that you learn when you learn 3D animation,
Hmm.
or you just have more of a general understanding of illustration even, or design, right? Come out of nowhere, like, you're right, it's a lot of tinkering. I remember tinkering. I remember the similar experiences where I'm downloading tools because I wanna try to learn how to create something in 3D, and I spend half a day on it, and I realize, "Oh, I can't spend half a day learning this because I maybe only scratched the surface of it, and
Hmm.
now I'm in a hole, and I still need to deliver something to a client, and so now I'm gonna probably find a route has less friction, right? And
Yeah.
if there wasn't a budget to hire a 3D animator, right, then you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
So, and that was a constant friction point, at least in my career. Running an agency was trying to find that balance of when do I upskill?
Yeah.
When do I hire out? What makes the
Yeah.
most
And
sense?
when do
But
you
the
look for something
calculation
on stock?
changes. Yeah, the
You know.
calculation changes depending on where you're at in your career. I would say this though. I would say, you know, number one, and I mentioned this before. I said, yeah, if you're a younger designer, you're probably going to use AI as more of a crutch than you would if you were a more experienced designer. Now, I didn't say that as being like a negative thing.
Okay.
I think new designers should be leaning into using AI and trying to figure out how to use AI, and how to use it in a way will unlock more creativity for them. But it's not a replacement for trying to understand those technical skills. I think those technical skills are still going to open up your eyes to even things like prompting better and
Yeah.
understanding how to describe things because you have that technical experience now. So I think it's critical, and I think every new creative should be dabbling in it, should be trying
Hmm.
AI and trying to and using all the different models, using all the different tools right now because it's still
Yeah.
pretty. Most have free plans that you could try and try to get
True. And
experience
and
with.
even if they don't, like you could almost, with the amount of information that's out there, if you didn't want to actually learn the tools of 3D animation, for example,
Mhm. Yeah.
or architectural rendering or whatever it is that you're kind of doing, or need to know that AI is sort of replacing those skills, you could still go back and watch tutorials and research the tools and follow people that are doing it and watch them show you how to do it. You
Mhm.
don't ever have to actually do it. But doing those things, like learning about those processes and learning about those tools, I think that alone can give you the knowledge base to start prompting better, to use AI more efficiently, to better communicate what it is you're kind of looking to do.
Mhm.
We learned by doing. I think this is an age where you're not going to get the opportunity to do it, but you still need to learn it. You still need to like have the basis of it, right? So I
Yeah, I
think
think so.
I think going back, and even if it's not a program you think you're going to use, I still think back to learning Adobe Flash back in like, circa 2009, whatever it
Keyframes,
was. Keyframing, learning late, like
motion
just
tween.
everything. Yeah. All the different crossfading and like all the,
Yeah.
interaction stuff, user interaction. It was like the first real like platform of, you know, little micro expression interactions and stuff. So I think back to that often and think like, God, I wasted so much time learning freaking Flash because nobody, 5 years later it disappeared and it was just too bulky on websites. It would take, most people 5 minutes to load a website that was fully Flash, unless you had a really good connection. But those skills that I learned in that program like
Hmm.
set me up for success. Like it made learning some of like the 3D animation tools and After
Yeah.
Effects and Premiere and a lot of the video tools that now are really like kind of video is obviously like content is king and video is king now, where 10, 15 years ago it was too sluggish on the internet to really have a lot of video on a lot of these sites, but now it's everything's so much faster. So it like set me up for success. I wish I hadn't had spent as much time, like it still feels like there was a lot of wasted time in there, and I could have. Nowadays I feel like if you would just watch people use those tools, like watch a tutorial and just like be interested and
Yeah.
curious into how the like sausage is made, I think would serve a young designer well, even
Hmm.
if they're not looking to get into that industry. It's helpful to know like, oh, look at what they're doing, like this is their process. First they start out with like, the wireframing, and then they start layering in the textures and the, or the keyframes, like, oh, you have to start with this keyframe to go to this keyframe, and you need that transition element,
Right.
and you need to like zoom in here and then do that crossfit. Like, oh, okay, so when I go in and I have a job where they're asking me to do some video work and I have no expertise in video, but there's an AI tool that can like get me there, but I don't know what to tell it. Like, how do I explain this transition? If I've watched those videos, I'm going to know that like that's a crossfade, or that's a zoom out, that's a dolly pan, that's a whatever. Like you'll start to develop that language and you can just tell AI, oh, right here, I want like a little crossfade, or I want a little pan across or something.
Right.
So I
Well,
think
that's
that's like,
interesting too. Yeah, that's like one of the things that I've read a lot about too is these like sort of hybrid areas or hybrid zones where you can kind of work between two areas. And one of the skills I learned really early on was HTML, how to code
mm,
HTML. And then soon after that, it was CSS. And then you have these other adjacent skills you pick up along the way. And I think going forward, that's going to be still really important. I think, especially as we get into UX, UI. So
yeah.
again, we're talking about a field, user experience, UX, that is going to require an understanding of human psychology and how they interact with machines and systems, right? And
Hmm.
UI design obviously is technical. How
Yeah.
big should something be? How does it adapt and react to screen size, stuff like that? These are these are some hard skills, but there's also some soft skills involved too. So I
Hierarchy,
think you become
contrast.
way more valuable as a creative if you have some of these other skills, where you could start pulling in, psychology and things like that into it.
Hmm.
So I think if you're a creative in the future, and this is the optimistic part, I think, is try to have enough, not saying be a generalist on purpose, but have enough knowledge in some of these areas where you can be effective. And if you do need an AI assist, you actually know what to ask for because you can
Yeah.
code a little bit, you can write a little bit, you understand user psychology when it comes to UX, UI, and mobile apps and devices and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. I think it's generalize in your knowledge, but focus in your actual like lane.
Hmm.
I think that's the key. And something I heard recently was like, what was it called? It was BT shaped was something
Yeah.
interesting I've heard
Yeah.
recently. Like super focused on one specialty and
Right.
then have these offshoots. So like you have your T and your offshoots are those, maybe some of those soft skills, but like a
Yeah.
little bit of a knowledge of coding, a little bit of a knowledge of video work processing, all
Hmm.
these different things I think will help you in whatever area you're really focused on.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that focus, that specializing in a I
Hmm.
think that to me, coming from and I think this was true for you too, like our pathways to our eventual careers were definitely more general, and like we had a lot of varied interest,
Oh,
and
100%.
we tried some illustration, we tried
Mhm.
designing, like I did photography, like I think it's like across the board there's so many
Yeah.
different things we dabbled in and never really
Yep.
like niche down that, and we didn't have to, right? Like there was
Right.
opportunities back then. So let's talk about how the challenge of that, and how as a young designer you're going to be able to find that specialty early in your career without knowing the ins and outs of what it is you're kind of, because that's the challenge, right? It's like I don't know how I would think like I should specialize in that. That's something I know I want to do. I maybe have to just maybe have to learn a few of them. I don't know. What would you
I
do?
think that's always a fear. I think niching down and getting super specialized or super focused is always a fear
Hmm.
people have. I think they're
Don't
afraid
want to close
that
doors.
if they niche down, they're going to lose and miss out on other opportunities in areas that they didn't know they were going to love, right?
Hmm.
And you want to keep everything open, right? But I
Yeah.
think the opposite's true. And we talked about this with Caitlin Lang a couple episodes ago about her experience and journey niching down in her business and how it's really
Yeah.
opened up more doors for her because she had a very, very narrow target audience
Hmm.
that she worked with. So in our case, though, we're talking about niching down in terms of skills and design, creative abilities, those sort of things. And
Hmm.
I think it's good to do that because you do, if you're known for,
If
let's
you're an
say you're
expert.
known for doing really elaborate layouts or really illustrative elements, right? Like
Yeah.
that's going to give you some opportunities in that particular space. It doesn't mean you can't do other things. And if it's something you really enjoy, and it goes back to your whole T-shaped thing. So you'd have your kind of core competency, your core skill, something that you could be known for, and then
Hmm.
you could branch out later into other areas that you might find interesting. But you're going to get a lot of opportunities. You'll get more opportunities essentially in kind of that vertical space that you're working in.
Sure. And I was just going to say too, I think one of the beauties of the first thing we kind of talked about is that when you build that kind of personal brand, and like if you develop your social media presence on a certain
Uh-huh.
platform, and build your own projects on there, there's nothing stopping you from niching on one platform or in one account, and then starting another account. If there's something else you want to do and you
Oh,
want to show
100,
off,
yeah, for sure.
build 5 accounts, like have different ones that you want to put different things on. Don't put them all on one, because it's going to look like you're just dabbling in a million different things, and people are going to lose
Right.
interest, because you do want to, you want to appear in whatever category you're showing to the world, that you are focused on that category, you are niching,
Hmm.
you are like really focused on that one particular thing, whatever it is, industry, skill set, video, illustration, whatever you're like, you're focused on in that particular category, like focus on it. It doesn't mean you can't have a different focus. You just separate it. You just kind of build a little
Yeah.
wall between the two, right? Build
Yeah,
a different
totally.
website for that.
I also think too that we use the word nimble a lot. We want to be nimble. We want to be light on our feet, and that's
Hmm.
kind of leans into the whole being able to pivot, being able to swivel out of something, right, later on. So with today's technology moving so rapidly, we always used to think technology moved fast even 20 years ago, but the rate it's moving now is just insanely
Yeah.
different than what we ever accustomed to. Like we would get software releases for Photoshop maybe every 6 months,
Maybe,
maybe
maybe once a year.
maybe once a year. And now it's like every other day there's an update or it's updating in the
Hmm.
background. There's a new thing. So, that's software, but technology wise is moving fast too with AI and everything else. So I would say pivot, be available to pivot and change and spin out of whatever you're in because that's going to make you nimble. It's going to make you more flexible to change in the future. One of the things I think it's important to recap kind of like the 5 categories we just covered because what I want to do next is I want to jump into what advice we would give our younger selves.
Hmm.
Before we do that, though, some of the things we talked about were building in public, showcase how you work, your process, don't be afraid to show your failures, start a
Hmm.
YouTube channel, show your creativity that way, and try to build an audience that way. And then try to master strategy and use our buyer behavior and things like that,
Hmm.
psychology. That's
Storytelling.
going to be very important skill, soft skill that you could attach to hard skills going forward.
Yeah.
And then the third one, the hybrid zones, like what can you do? What can you focus on skills wise that is has adjacent skills that you can add to it or have some kind of knowledge in. So like we said, UX, UI, you have to have psychology. Web development and design, you have to know coding a little bit still. Even
Mm-hmm.
with AI assists, you have to know what you're talking about. One thing we didn't talk about though, we did a little bit, but was the kind of AI as your junior designer. This makes sense for people like us that are a little bit older and we've been in the industry for a while and we are using this.
Yeah.
But I would say if you're a new, use AI as kind of a coworker or a creative friend to help you
Yeah.
think things through. So
Yeah.
that would
Or a
be
boss.
the
Use it at every level of your
use it.
like.
I like that. Use it as a boss if you're looking for a career or a path or something. Set up a
Mm-hmm.
GPT as a boss. Have it help you, figure out what to do.
Yeah.
Um, and then specialize, but be available to pivot. Be ready to pivot if you have to. But try to find, do the T shape. Try to find that thing that you're really, really good at, and then allow yourself some wiggle room to pivot out of it. All right.
Amazing.
I think we covered
Rocky,
some really, really good stuff.
I think it was great. So what would you tell your younger self? What are you going to text you 20, 30, 50 years ago,
Yeah. Okay. If I
back
were
when
to
you were
text
first starting out in your
myself,
career? 60
yeah,
years ago? You're
wow,
old.
that is so mean.
I know.
6 years ago.
I don't mean it.
Um,
10 years ago when you were
I thought about
25.
this. All right. Now you're just being mean again. So
I'll always be
I
younger
thought
than you. Just
I did think
remember.
about this, and there were a few things that I look back at now and realize, okay, that was not a big deal. Why did I stress about that? Why would I worry about that?
Yeah.
One of the things that I always bothered me was I did not have the formal art education, art
Mm,
degree that a lot of other creatives I either worked with or, you know, knew in social circles and things like that had. And
yeah.
I remember always feeling like an underdog, always feeling like
A
they
little
know
less
more than
than.
I do. They know something. They
Mm,
learned something in school that I didn't learn, and they're going to call
sure.
me out on it. And I'm a fraud because I self taught. I went to Barnes and Noble and read all the design books. I
Mm-hmm.
just tinkered and created on my own. So that's one of the things I would tell myself now. I would say, dude, don't sweat not having a formal art degree.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Nobody
And
cares.
even people with those don't know what they're doing. Like that
Right.
is, I'm going to piggyback and give your younger self that advice. Nobody knows what they're doing. Don't worry that you don't know what you're doing because we're all literally out here faking it all the
Right.
time.
Right. So
All right.
now,
Give me number 2.
did I miss opportunities on that? Maybe, but
Mm,
whatever. Now that I've looked back and I realized I kind of blazed my own path anyway, it really didn't make a difference. Second thing I would say is, hey, don't worry that you don't have a huge portfolio. Like, that's okay. And we talked a little bit about this too. And I
mm-hmm.
wrote this before we talked about this was build one, create something, create your own, make it
Yeah.
fake. It doesn't matter. Use that as an opportunity to build your skills, create a portfolio, even if it's not real projects that you were hired to do, because you're going to learn something from the process and it's going to help you get more work in the future. And so that's something I would say is build a lot of stuff, create a lot of stuff, design a lot of stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
share it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing would be just learn as many skills as I possibly could. There were plenty of times where I didn't have a lot of work, a lot of business, a lot of things to do. I could
Yep.
have learned those 3D tools and spent the time doing that. I could have went deeper into programming, things like that. So I would say
Yeah.
try to learn as much as you can. Um, Pick up any new AI tool. Well, that didn't apply to me back then, but today I would pick up any tool possible and try to play with it. I do that now.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you how many AI tool subscriptions I have at this point. I'm actually afraid to look at my credit card statement, but there's quite a bit. So
This
those are the
episode
three
brought to
things
you
I would
by
focus on.
Rocket Money. Rocket Money will look at your spending report and tell you if you have too many AI subscriptions, Rocky.
All right, Clark, looking
All right.
back at yourself there
I mean, some of
85
those are
years
good.
ago,
There's some
what would you
crossover.
tell yourself?
God, the hardest part about this is like it's the whole paradox of like telling your younger self something that may not that maybe the mistakes you made led to where you are now. So there's definitely like some hard
Mm-hmm.
parts of looking back on your career and trying to tell somebody young now what to do, because it could be we're completely wrong and other things will lead to better things for you. But I would say, and I touched on this, like worry less about the tools and
Yeah.
more about your taste and your,
Mhm.
learn the history of art and like stuff that I still haven't done enough to learn. I
Yeah.
think those are the things that are really going, like, learn why you like certain things. Don't just stop at like, well, I like the minimalist look or something. Like, go back to the
Mhm.
history of it and like figure out who started that and go back to the history of architecture, whatever it is, And you don't have to be an expert in all these programs. Like I said before, don't spend 6 months trying to learn HTML and Dreamweaver and like, I think it's still important. Like, this is where I get into the paradox, because I still think like, okay, I learned that, I don't use it in my career, but it helps me be able to like go walk into a room of engineers and speak to them semi fluently about like HTML and coding and CSS
Mhm.
and what I'm kind of, my vision for it is like, can we just, knowing that how like that they can do it. I don't necessarily know how to do it now, but I can kind of know that there's a way to do it. So that's not like in stone advice, but maybe just like don't worry so much about the programs and maybe develop your taste level more. This is one that I wish somebody would have told me. You should go and interview with people, like get informational interviews every step like go to people that
Mm.
go to your parents' friends or your
Yep.
buddy's mom and be like, can you just sit down with me and do like a fake informational interview, like where I sit and ask you about your company, or you ask me about what things I want to be working, like whatever it is, come up, ask ChatGPT to run a fake interview with you, like do informational interviews. uh, Reach out to people you admire and say, hey, can I get 10 minutes of your time? Can I buy you a cup of coffee? I would love to just
Mhm.
ask you about your career, ask you about your life, like how'd you get into this, like what advice would you give somebody? i
Right.
I think the beauty of that is, number one, and this was something I didn't have early on in my career, is the ability to like talk to people, and like I
Yeah.
was always very nervous and very shy, and
Mhm.
and now I can walk into an interview with a lot more confidence. And obviously a lot of that is you just get older and you worry less about that kind of stuff. But I think
Right.
it's also
Right.
like a skill you have to develop, and something you can develop if you
Mhm.
do those steps, like reach out, make connections. And then the second part of that, and it's crucial I think in our industry, is your network. Like those people will then be a part
Hmm.
of your network, and if there is a job, they might think of you. They might, 5 years down the road be like, oh, I saw this, he actually met with me, and I did an informational interview with him, I
Hmm.
remember really liking that person. um that those kind of connections that you're forming through that process of, even if it doesn't lead to a job then and there, like I can't tell you how many times people that I've worked with in the past have like reached out years later and been like, hey, we have an opening, do you want to come join us? Like there's so many opportunities around that, and I think it's crucial now more than ever to build those human connections.
Right.
As we're working less with people and more with AI and stuff, it's like
And more
develop those
remote.
for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more remote, less in the
Yep.
office. Learn to say no is my third.
Ooh,
It's
good one.
not a bad thing to say, that's a little beyond the scope of what we talked about. I got into that, and I'm sure you're the same. Like you give clients the world, you don't say no, you kind of just keep stretching and stretching, and then before you know it, you're being paid $1,000 to do $10,000 worth of work. Value your time, value your expertise, and in a lot of ways, I think what I've learned in my career is like the more you value yourself and your time and put a price on it, the more other people will think he must be right. I'll
Yeah, I
I'll
love that.
value that too.
Right.
And we've talked about on the show before. It's like you can price a logo at $1,000 and sell it to somebody, and they're probably going to poke holes in it and go like, I don't really like it. If you sell somebody the same logo for $20,000, I'm not saying you can do that. You have to have the bona fides to kind of back it up
Mhm.
or whatever,
Right.
and you have to know how to sell it and everything. But it does not hurt. It definitely, like, people will look at that logo as being more valuable, and they will
Yeah.
look at it with a different lens than if it was a cheap, Fiverr logo or
Oh,
something.
totally. Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
And just
it's
be curious, like we talked about.
being curious is key. Is
Yeah.
key. I think we covered a lot of really, really good things. I do want to end with a closing thought here. We obviously there's a lot of things to discuss and debate. Um,
We're not going to do some hot takes, some fire questions.
we have some provocative questions.
I like the provocative questions we've got on here.
I think
We
we
can
should
do our rapid
let's do
fire.
let's do it before the closing thought then.
All right. Would you rather be a junior designer today with AI or a junior designer in 2005 with none of today's resources and have to learn it all over again?
I'm pretty optimistic. I think while it is definitely challenging to be a new designer today, I think the opportunities in the future are pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would still like to start today
I like it.
if I could. Yeah.
I would agree with you. I think the only caveat to that is like the job market. If we had I don't know. That's a tough thing for me. It's like, okay,
I think it's
in
going to
2005 with the
evolve
same
though.
job market. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to evolve and the positions and jobs will evolve. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's going to reduce the amount of creativity that's needed. I think it's just going to look different.
I think we'll find a level, we'll find a new balance probably.
All right, give me your hot take on this, Clark.
All right, hit me.
Design degrees are becoming less valuable than strong portfolios and AI
Mm,
fluency. Do you agree or disagree?
100% agree. I think,
Yeah.
and my hot take of that hot take is I think it's always been that way. I think, and I don't
Unless you
know.
were trying to get a job and they were looking at your degree where you came from and not necessarily your portfolio.
Yeah.
But
I
if you're
just
an
think,
independent, I don't think your design degree mattered at all.
no. And I think the work that you are showing, especially in our, it's such a visual fields like design industry in general, whatever it is, like you said, woodworking, architecture, photography,
Yeah. Yeah.
UX, UI. Like if you can show somebody the things you've done, that to me is so much more powerful than like a degree that, just
Mm-hmm.
it's a piece of paper. People, you had to buy that, basically. It's college is a scam. Nobody go to college, kids. Stay out of
Hey, whoa.
school.
Whoa, whoa.
That's my hot take.
Learning how to think, though. I think that's something we will always need.
Sure.
Learning
Sure.
how to
And I would
think.
say my one caveat, if you have the opportunity to like go to Harvard or Yale or somewhere where there's like a lot of like people that are going to end up being CEOs of companies and stuff and you can make great connections, go there. If
Yeah.
you're just going to, you know, some some small school, like it's still valuable, don't get me wrong. You can make connections and stuff. But like that is the one thing that I feel like people that go to certain schools have a leg up on is they know people that are, titans of
It's because,
industry and
yeah.
stuff. Good connections. Again, just do an informational interview with one of those people though.
Yeah, it's cheaper.
Yeah. All right. Rocky, if you could teach someone one skill to start as a design career today, what would that skill be?
To start a design career today,
OnlyFans. Sell feet pics.
honestly, I think learn to draw,
Hmm.
learn to illustrate by hand,
Wow.
because that is foundational.
I like it.
I've met a handful of quote unquote designers in my career that couldn't draw on a
Mm-hmm.
sketch pad. And I always thought that was so weird. I'm like, how are you not able to draw?
Yeah.
Because drawing isn't your hand. It's how you think. It's how you see the world in your head. And I feel
Ooh.
like that translates to any medium.
Wow.
So I would say learn to get a pencil out, learn paper, and learn how to draw and try to illustrate the world as you see it.
I love that. I think that's a clip right there. Clip that, put it
If
on
you
social because
insist.
that's great. Yeah, that's a really good one. I didn't know how to draw when I first started out, so that's really interesting. I think that's a good. That's a good because it
It's a
does teach you
very
a lot of
important trait.
yeah, and it helps you in developing your how you think. You're right. It's a good one. All right.
All right, Clark, will the title designer even be a job title in 10 years, or will everyone just be strategists
Yeah. Or everybody's a creative director.
or AI wrangler?
AI wrangler, prompt engineer. Ugh, hate that
Ugh, those
title.
are bad. Those are bad.
I don't know. That is a very interesting question. Will designer be a title in 10 years? Maybe not. Maybe designer won't be a title. Like maybe because that's designer to some degree is the entry level title that we all kind of get applied to
Yeah,
us when we're starting out in our careers, and as we
true.
go, as you get up the ladder or whatever, it's you become director, or like, your art director, your creative director, your creative strategist, your head of strategy, your head of design, whatever. So maybe designer won't be as much of a field in
Hmm.
10 years because those entry level jobs are starting to disappear, and you'll have to dive right into like art director level. But your art directing is, and this was an interesting, I think I've maybe mentioned this on the podcast. There was some clip of an author talking about how, he worked with an illustrator for the illustrations in his fantasy book. He told him what he wanted. He told him his vision for the dragon or whatever, like, or the alien species or whatever. And he really kind of went back and forth with the illustrator. The illustrator would send him sketches, and then he would refine them and give him tips and,
Yeah.
corrections and stuff. Um, he said he would never put his name as the creator of that illustrator's work, even though he had a big hand in it.
Right.
In the same way, he was relating it to, I would never put my name on the work of an AI art generator, image generator, or video
Right.
generator.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not, I'm art directing. I can definitely say that I art directed that work. I gave it the
Sure.
roadmap and what I wanted,
Hmm.
but I didn't do it. I didn't create it, so I wouldn't put my name on it. And so I think
It's
that's
interesting.
interesting. I think that's where we're going to go. I think it's going to be, you're going to be art director from the start, and so the
So
designer
it's
will
going
be
to be
the
more
AI.
specialized. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing too. Even today, what percentage of my work is design? There's so
Hmm.
many layers of things. There's communication, there's strategy, there's stuff that isn't technically design. Design's only a
Yeah.
small portion of what I
Sales.
do. So maybe it's not a great title anyway, because who just designs things?
Who's a designer
There's more
anyway?
that goes into it than that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. All right,
So, all right.
wrap
Well,
us
great
up.
stuff. So, I know it's been doom and gloom, and we talked about a lot of really terrible statistics about the job market for creatives and stuff. But I do think this. I think if you're a student or you're a junior designer listening to this, we're not going to lie. It's harder than when we started. The path is murkier. But here's what's also true: you have tools today that we couldn't even dream of.
Mm,
You can learn anything. You could build anything. You could communicate with anything, with anyone. So it's not really whether you can build a career in design. It's, are you willing to do something that's different than how our career started? And I think that's the
yeah.
important thing, is that the creative careers tomorrow are going to look a lot different than the creative careers did yesterday. And so mapping them, I don't think it's a worthwhile endeavor at this
Mm,
point. I just think you have to look toward the future, try to look around the corner, see how it's going to change, and then really
yeah.
just utilize your skills at that point.
And your human, your humanity. I would Simon Sinek, who's a author and corporate strategist
Hmm.
and organizational strategist. I think he was on a podcast recently, and he said something really interesting about this world that we're in now. He believes that when you've taken away a lot of these like lower level skills and stuff, and you've kind of, AI has basically brought art into the industrialization process. Like it's just stamping out whatever you want and creating things that people used to have to create. He said that the value of a human made object, like of a custom, bespoke, does, whatever it is, anything that has to be made by hand.
Hmm.
And I don't
Hmm.
think, he even meant like something physical made by hand, but like illustration made by hand,
Hmm.
or anything that's like, that somebody had to actually put time and effort into. It will become a narrower field, like there won't be as many opportunities, but the value of those things will be greater because they're
Hmm.
made by hand, and people
Right.
will put more value on those. So I think that's the optimistic side as well, and the message that I hope with some of these ideas and thoughts we're kind of putting out there, people will take away.
No, we'll leave it there. That's great. Well, we want to thank our listeners for joining us today.
And if you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. And if you're feeling, a little generous, leave us a review, leave us a comment, leave us a like, what have you.
And as always, stay curious, stay creative.
We'll see you next time, everybody.